My name is Siren Calloway, and I learned a long time ago that silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes it's just the sound of breaking quietly. Tonight, my mother's friends laughed when she said it again, that line she's perfected over the years, the one that slices without drawing blood. Serene? Oh, she tries. They smiled, the way people do when pity tastes sweeter than respect. No one looked at me long enough to see what that sentence really did, how it pressed against an old bruise that never healed. I'd spent years letting it go, pretending it didn't matter, telling myself that being underestimated was easier than being resented. But somewhere between the laughter and the clinking of crystal glasses, something inside me went very still, because this time I felt it, the quiet shift between endurance and decision. The moment you stop swallowing what you don't deserve. They think I'll nod, smile, and fade into the wallpaper again. They have no idea how wrong they are. I've never trusted parties where people drink to prove they're happy, especially when the laughter sounds rehearsed. That night, my mother's house in Charleston gleamed like a southern palace, chandeliers blazing, white roses climbing over silver vases, the hum of a piano drifting through the sound of crystal. Outside, the Ashley River caught the sunset like a mirror, quiet, calm, and mercifully real. The banquet wasn't really a birthday celebration. It was theater, another chance for my mother to remind Charleston that she was still relevant, still perfect, still untouchable. I stood by the tall windows, the only one holding water instead of wine. My eyes traced the room the way I'd scan a map, measuring distance, escape routes, temperature. Old habits die hard. Miles, my brother, was explaining how his company had just acquired properties along the Florida coast. My mother's applause came right on cue. Nora, my sister-in-law, described a new exhibit she was curating for the National Arts Council. Compliments floated like perfume, sweet and heavy. No one asked how my week had been. They never did. Then my mother lifted her glass. Her smile could slice glass. She praised Miles for his empire, Nora for her artistry, and then paused, looking at me. And my youngest, she said softly, still finding her way. The table rippled with polite laughter. Thin and practiced, I smiled too, fingers tightening around the glass until my knuckles went white. I'd heard it all my life, when I chose grit over glamour, purpose over comfort. In this family, trying meant not enough. In my world, trying meant saving lives. Outside, the wind from the river shifted, carrying the scent of rain, the quiet warning before a storm no one else could see. Dinner stretched beneath the chandelier's glow. A slow parade of courses and compliments. The table was a mirror of perfection. White linen, polished silver, candles trembling in crystal holders. My mother sat at the center like a reigning queen, her tone warm but sharp enough to draw blood. Miles was deep into another story about Jacksonville, land deals, investors, the governor's personal call. The applause came right on cue. My mother's laughter rang high and satisfied, her pride swelling with each detail. Then she turned to me. And what about you, Siren? Still working through those, what are they called, relief reports? I kept my smile steady. Interesting in its own way. Nora, ever helpful, leaned in. Must be endless paperwork. My mother chuckled. I keep telling her to stay here in Charleston. Do something easier. FEMA sounds noble, but honestly, no one knows what they do. Laughter circled the table, soft and cutting. I smiled. The way you do when you've learned silence keeps the peace. They weren't wrong. Most people truly didn't know, and I wasn't about to explain. My phone vibrated on the linen, blue light flashing. System forming. Gulf. Possible activation level 3. Stand by. I placed it face down, looked up. Miles was describing a new yacht. Nora, her art show. No one noticed the sky outside turning the color of bruised steel. I poured more water, caught the faint metallic scent of ozone. Nora followed my gaze toward the river. The Ashley looks peaceful tonight. Depends on the night. I said. It can swallow a dock in 3 hours if the wind shifts. The laughter faltered. Forks paused. I smiled. Easy. Just an example. Outside, the wind changed direction. Inside, something in me did too. After dinner, the guests splintered into smaller groups, voices rising with the wine. My mother found me by the window, hand light on my arm, tone rehearsed. Don't hide away, dear. Come greet my friends. They've been asking about you. She led me to a half circle of women wrapped in perfume and satin. This is my youngest, Seren. She works for FEMA, the emergency agency. How admirable. One said, office work, yes? Before I could answer, my mother smiled. Exactly. Paperwork? Coordination. Keeps her busy. I nodded once. Something like that. Their attention drifted back to safer topics. Weather, travel, the best seats on Delta, on a small TV nearby. A red swirl flickered across a weather map before the channel switched back to a commercial. No one noticed. When I looked up, one woman was still watching me, Mrs. Wallace. Her brow furrowed, searching memory. Your daughter works for FEMA? She asked my mother. Yes. My mother replied lightly, smoothing my sleeve. Always liked safe things. Not like Miles. He takes risks, Mrs. Wallace smiled faintly. Safety doesn't mean weakness. Eleanor. The words hung in the air like perfume gone sour. My mother's smile thinned. Mrs. Wallace turned back to me, voice low. I've heard your name before. Baton Rouge. Maybe? Could be, I said, matching her calm. I've worked there. She studied me, puzzled. Familiar, somehow. I didn't answer. But the river outside had shifted, and so had the air. Something was coming, quiet, certain, unstoppable. The mood inside had changed, not from weather, but from my mother's eyes. Sharp, uneasy, watching me like I'd disturbed her perfect stage. Miles was bragging about another bold investment. The guests laughed too loudly, and somewhere beneath it, I heard the wind against the glass. My phone buzzed. Hurricane Laura, Category 4, moving northeast. Full NDRC standby expected. I slipped from the table to the balcony. The first drops hit the railing, soft but certain. The air smelled of metal and rain. 48 hours, maybe less. Behind me, my mother's voice. Work again. Just a quick check-in. You can't keep running off, Seren. Even your brother saves lives and still knows how to live. Her tone was pity wearing perfume. I turned to her. I don't need balance. I said, I just do what has to be done. She froze, not used to the weight of my voice. When she walked away, her glass trembled. Inside, laughter returned like static. Another alert flashed. President may call emergency conference 2,300 hours. Not a forecast anymore, a summons. I glanced at the family photos on the wall. Everyone framed, smiling, except one empty square. Mine. By 9. Rain drummed on the windows. Guests stayed. My mother insisted, Charleston rain, nothing serious. She raised her glass. To Miles, to Nora, and to Seren, who keeps trying. Polite laughter. Glasses clinked. I sipped water and heard echoes of another storm. All teams evacuate. Follow the plan. My phone buzzed again. Laura upgraded to Category 5. Immediate activation. Across the table. Mrs. Wallace went pale. My son's in Houston. The winds. Her eyes met mine. She remembered. My mother smiled. Serene just loves talking about hurricanes, though she's never seen one. I stood, calm. You're wrong. Mother, I have. Thunder cracked. A glass spilled. Red wine blooming like blood. Then my phone rang again. 3 coded tones. I answered quietly. Calloway speaking. Director. You're needed. The president's briefing in 30. Copy. I looked at my mother. I have to go. Now? It's just rain. Exactly. I walked out as thunder rolled. Real, raw, honest. the sound of the life that was mine. Rain came down in torrents as I stepped onto the porch. The wind off the Ashley River whipped through the yard, scattering petals and napkins across the soaked lawn. Guests screamed and ran for cover. But I stood still when my phone rang. 3 short tones, 1 long. The code that meant only one thing. Director Calloway, the President has authorized full mobilization. You are to assume operational command. Immediate departure. Understood. Preparing to deploy. You have 4 hours. Evacuation's already underway. I ended the call and looked toward the river. Gray water, no horizon. Behind me, the music inside played on, thin and meaningless. My mother appeared at the doorway, clutching her wineglass. You're leaving? Now? It's just rain. Serin! Not here, I said quietly. The Gulf. And it's not rain. She laughed, brittle and defensive. You're not a meteorologist. No, I said. I'm the one the president calls when they're wrong. The color drained from her face. She turned to the guests with a nervous laugh. She's joking, of course. My phone cut through her words. Loud on speaker. Director Calloway, Air Force One will be briefed at 2300. We need your coordinates. Silence spread through the room like smoke. I met my mother's eyes. I have to go. People are waiting. A gust slammed the door open, shattering glass. I stepped into the rain. Above me, a FEMA helicopter cut through the sky, its blue lights blinking like a heartbeat. Minutes after I left, the TV lit up with breaking news. FEMA has activated the National Disaster Response Command under Director Serin Calloway. The room froze. Serin Calloway? Someone whispered. Mrs. Wallace stood, voice trembling. Baton Rouge, 2019. My son was trapped in the flood. She led the rescue, waist deep in water, calm as stone. Everyone listened to her. No one spoke. My mother's glass shook in her hand. Miles muttered, Maybe it's just the same name. Mrs. Wallace turned to him. No, she doesn't just work for FEMA. She commands it. On screen, I appeared in uniform, headset on, eyes fixed on storm maps. Activate Task Force Bravo. Coordinate with Air Command. Move now. Blue light flickered across my mother's face. Her glass slipped and shattered, wine spreading red across the floor. Outside, thunder rolled over the river. Inside, Mrs. Wallace whispered, That's your daughter. Eleanor. The woman who leads when everyone else breaks. Lightning flared, illuminating the empty frame on the wall, now glowing with my reflection from the TV. I don't remember exactly when I left Charleston, only the roar of the rotor blades and the wind slashing across my face, sharp as steel. Lightning tore open the sky to the southwest, where Hurricane Laura was closing in. By the time I reached the command center in Atlanta, the room was alive with motion, screens glowing, radios hissing, maps bleeding red and yellow. On one monitor in the corner, CNN was replaying the moment I'd walked out of my mother's dinner. The headline read, Director Calloway assumes control of national response. There was no time to think. Report. I ordered. Power grids down in Lafayette. 2 hospitals offline. Deploy Alpha Team to restore critical systems. Send Coast Guard to Baton Rouge. Confirmed. Director, no one questioned me. My people knew, when I said go, they went. The secure line blinked. Ma'am, the president is on. I answered. Director, how bad is it? Worse than projected. I said, but we'll hold. We always do. A pause. Then, quietly, the nation is lucky to have you. Calloway, when the line went dead, I faced my team. We move in phases. No one rests until it's done. Let's bring them home. A chorus of yes, ma'am, filled the room. Then a technician switched on a side screen. Charleston, live feed, floodwater rising along the Ashley River, wind ripping through trees, a streetlight collapsing right outside my mother's house. For a heartbeat. I couldn't breathe. My 2 worlds had collided, the duty I carried, and the family that never saw it. Ma'am, Emergency calls from Charleston sectors. Send relief convoy from Savannah. Patch me through local command. I didn't need her to understand me anymore. I just needed her alive. Outside the window, lightning split the sky. It was 3 a.m. The strongest storm in 30 years was making landfall. And I, the daughter who was still trying, was leading a nation through it. When the sun finally rose, it did so quietly, as if afraid to disturb what the night had broken. The storm had passed, from the command center in Atlanta. The world looked still again. The walls were lined with flickering monitors, their once chaotic red and yellow storm paths now reduced to a soft, fading swirl. The room smelled like burnt coffee, damp paper, and the heavy calm that follows survival. 2 million people evacuated. 0 large-scale casualties. A miracle, by operational standards. A miracle born of exhaustion, precision, and the refusal to lose. I sat back, feeling the weight of the headset slide from my shoulders. For the first time in nearly 20 hours, I let myself breathe. The steady tap of keyboards filled the air. Outside the reinforced glass, helicopters lifted off one by one, ferrying supplies, hope, and proof that we'd done what we came to do. My assistant approached quietly, tablet in hand. Director, incoming video call, from Charleston. I nodded. The screen blinked to life. My mother appeared. The sight of her startled me more than the storm had. Her hair was uncombed, her elegant silk blouse damp at the collar. Behind her, the once flawless dining room was half ruined, soaked curtains clinging to broken windows, crystal scattered across the floor. The chandelier still hung, though crooked now, a small symbol of defeat. For a long moment, she said nothing. Her eyes moved over my uniform. The command room behind me, the people moving quickly in disciplined silence. When she finally spoke, her voice trembled. Serene, I didn't know. It's all right, Mom. Why didn't you ever tell me? I held her gaze. Because you never asked, and because saving people isn't something you talk about at dinner. Her eyes filled. Her shoulders caved slightly. The lines of pride and control that always shaped her face were gone. She looked human, frightened, fragile, real. They said you ordered the dam release, she whispered. That you saved the east side of Charleston. It wasn't just me, I said softly. It was my team. They made it happen. Her hand covered her mouth. I could hear the faint shudder in her breath. For the first time. She didn't look at me like a disappointment or a puzzle she couldn't solve. She looked at me like a person. I always thought you were still trying to catch up. She said, but you were already so far ahead. I didn't answer. Not because I didn't know what to say, but because silence felt truer than words. She wiped her cheek, voice breaking on the edges. I'm proud of you, Seren. I nodded once. I know. The call ended. The screen went black, leaving behind my reflection, tired eyes, messy hair, the faint red mark from my headset. I turned toward the window. Outside, the tarmac was drenched in sunlight, clean and sharp after the storm. Helicopters glinted like silver insects against a sky that had been washed clear of everything: anger, pride, misunderstanding. Somewhere out there, my mother was standing in what was left of her garden, maybe staring at the river, maybe finally understanding what it meant to face something larger than yourself. The storm had taken roofs, trees, and silence, but it had also given back something I'd stopped hoping for: recognition without resentment. I straightened in my chair, the command boards humming softly around me. There were still reports to file, towns to rebuild, lives to steady, but for the first time in years, the weight on my chest felt different, lighter, steadier, earned. Outside, the world was bright and raw and new, and for once, I didn't need anyone to see what I'd done. It was enough that, finally, they could see who I was. A week later, I returned to Charleston. The river was calm again, soft waves tapping against the wooden pilings, the air carrying the faint scent of salt and pine. The house looked smaller now, stripped of its perfection. The storm had left its mark, shingles missing, shutters warped, roses flattened by the wind. But it was standing. So was she. My mother stood on the porch when I pulled up. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then she said, quietly, almost shyly, "I baked raisin bread. You used to love it." I smiled. That was enough. Inside, the air smelled faintly of cinnamon and rain. We sat by the window overlooking the pier, where a few FEMA crews were still clearing debris, orange vests bright against the silver light of morning. The river moved slow and heavy, as if exhausted too. After a while, my mother spoke. "You know, everyone in town's talking about you. They call you the commander in the shadows." I laughed softly. "I don't need to be called anything." "I know," she said. Her hand found mine on the table, an uncertain touch. Warm, trembling. "But if it's all the same, I'd like to call you Seren Calloway." "My daughter." I turned to her. In her eyes, there was no trace of pride or pretense, just quiet recognition. Gratitude, a love that had learned its shape too late, but arrived anyway. Outside, the river caught the last light of afternoon, golden and still. A FEMA helicopter passed overhead, distant but clear. My mother looked up, her voice barely above a whisper. "Every time I hear that sound, I'll think of you." I squeezed her hand. "Just promise me one thing, never call me still trying again." She laughed, a sound I hadn't heard in years, soft and real. "No," she said, "I'll say, my daughter is the woman this nation listens to." For a moment, we sat in silence, watching the water shift with the fading sun. The air was warm, forgiving. Beyond the window, the last of the cleanup crews packed their equipment. The river, once wild, now reflected nothing but light. I looked toward the horizon, the same stretch of water that had framed my entire life, and felt, finally, the kind of peace that doesn't announce itself. It just is. No more explanations, no more defenses. The storm had taken everything that was fragile, and what remained was unbreakable. Let them look, I thought, because this time, if they do, they'll see.